Hello and welcome to Hawkeye Nation. This is HawkCast, your Iowa football, basketball, and recruiting podcast brought to you by Hawkeye Beacon and Rivals.com. I'm your recruiting analyst and host, Eliot Clough at Eliot Clough on Twitter, joined as always by Ross Binder, our managing editor of the site over at Hawkeye Beacon. Before we get started, make sure that you hit that subscribe button wherever you're listening, Apple Podcast, Spotify, especially on YouTube. We'd love to have you over there. And if you are there on YouTube, drop a like, drop a comment, let us know what you're thinking about Hawkeye football as things kick off in just about, what is it, 24 days now. Niall Kinnick days until Iowa Hawkeye football in Kinnick Stadium, and just a few days until Media Day, which, man, we were just talking about this before we hopped on. Ross and I are so excited for some tangible content that we can talk about on the podcast, that we can write about, that we're not just writing the same things over and over again. So we're very excited. And with that in mind, this week, I wrote a question about our five biggest questions, or I wrote an article about our five biggest questions heading into Hawkeye Media Day on Friday and then Kids Day on Saturday. And we're going to talk about that a little bit here before we get into some buy sell with day trading Ross here. He's got this all locked up for us. But a couple questions that I think everybody wants to know is, has or will the offensive line take a step forward? And then who's that third and fourth? I guess more like seventh and eighth, sixth, seventh, eighth defensive line. Like, who are those guys going to be? And Ross, I mean, I feel like I've kind of, I don't know if beating a dead horse is the right way to put it, but I've been writing, we've been writing about this. We've been talking about this. Like, here's your, I guess, our final opportunity to really address it before we hear more about it this weekend. But bottom line, like, do you think the offensive line takes a step forward this year?
I do. And I'm hoping that's not just kind of, misplaced optimism, but it feels like the pieces are really in place for them to make that step forward. The experience is there. Like these guys have done it on the field, not to the level that that people want to see it and that the offense really needs them to do it at. But they've got the reps in now. They've got the practices. They've been here for several springs, training camps, etc. They've got that. Barnett has been here coaching the OL for several years now. So there's no really new coach smell with him anymore. Like he's a part of the surroundings. Like he is the guy there. So like they're used to him, he's used to them, etc. I think the wrinkle is, the Tim Lester of it all, the new offensive scheme. And, that learning a new scheme is never easy, but it seems like, Lester is a really good teacher. So I think that'll help guys learn it faster. And, I hate to, you talk about beating a dead horse, how many times can we beat the dead horse that is how bad the offense was? But in this case, they're starting from such a low point, like, it's got to be an improvement. It feels like, if the health is there, and that's the other, good news so far from the off season is it seems like these guys are healthy. Like that was not the case last year. There were a lot of, nagging injuries on the offensive line, some bigger ones that, knocked guys out of several games. Logan Jones obviously didn't play for a good chunk of the season. So you've got the health, you've got the experience, you've got a coordinator now who, knock on wood, seems like he knows what he's doing better than the previous guy. He's a good teacher. So you hope with all that combination of all those factors, I think that, yeah, you're going to get the offensive line. You're not going to say like, oh, this is one of the greatest offensive lines from Iowa in the last 20 years, maybe. Like that's probably pushing it. But can it be a solid and effective offensive line? Give McNamara, the quarterback, time, open holes for the running backs, etc. Like the stuff that we just haven't seen them able to do on a consistent basis the last, 2, 3, 4 years. Can they hit that level? And it feels like the pieces are there to do it. And like I said, hopefully not misguided optimistic about it, but I think they do. I think this is a step forward for those guys up front.
You talk about the experience. And when I've been writing about the offensive line, I've cited this stat a bunch of times. I'm going to read this paragraph for you that you've also read a bunch of times now. Presumed starters Mason Richmond, Bo Stevens, Logan Jones, Connor Colby, and Jennings Dunker have started a combined 126 games and played in 150. Throw in Tyler Ellsbury and Nick DeYoung, who will both play this season as well, assuming, whatever happens, because injuries are going to happen.
There's going to be some rotation. Like you're not going to have five guys. Five guys aren't going to take every snap for 13 weeks. Like
exactly. And those numbers go to 153 starts and 233 games played.
That is a ton of experience at the college level because, you only get usually, 3-4 years with guys. With COVID, that's kind of got expanded. But, you're looking around 3, 4, 5 years. Like you play, an offensive line unit. What is that? 5 guys, 12 games. That's 60 total games there. So we're talking like several years worth of collective experience at this point. Like that's a lot at this level. If it's going to pay off, like it's got to pay off now. Like it has to, especially because several of these guys aren't going to be there next year. Like this is the last rodeo for how many guys? Like 3 or 4?
I think Mason's gone, Logan's gone, Connor Colby's gone, and Nick DeYoung's gone. Is Tyler Ellsbury gone? I think so.
He might be. Yeah.
I should look at our scholarship chart, but it's going to be a lot. I mean, I know Jennings Dunker's back. Jennings Dunker is back. I think Bo Stevens is back. Let me pull up our scholarship chart here as I'm pulling that up. DeYoung, Ellsbury, Jones, Richmond, and Colby. So that's 5 of the 7 rotation guys. So Stevens will be back. Jennings Dunker will be back. They will both be seniors.
Yeah, so that is wow, there's going to be some huge turnover next year. But yeah, that's something we'll be talking about next August. But for right now, right, like it's just these guys, tons of experience. Now's the time when that pays off, like it should, hopefully.
The other note that I think we need to address as far as big questions going into this weekend is that defensive line. One thing I noted in our notes is Brian Allen featured in some camp content, and they don't do that unless they think a guy is either going to play or have a role, right? Like we saw John Nestor was in that one hype video like a ton, and then they put him at the top, second spot in the cornerback depth chart. So there's some like that goes through somebody. I don't know who it goes through, but it goes through somebody. They don't just take video and put it up on the internet. I'll tell you that.
Right. It's not random.
Right. So that's, I guess, encouraging with that in mind, seeing Brian Allen as a guy that was featured there. I would presume that means he's showing some growth. We did get some information from a source about how things are going at fall camp. You can check that out at iowa.rivals.com. If you're not a subscriber yet, you can do that today, iowa.rivals.com/subscribe. We're going to have a promo coming too, so stick around for that. You can get that fall intel on all of our premium content there. But I guess I feel more confident in the defensive end depth than I do in the defensive tackle depth, but I feel more confident in the high end play of the defensive tackles than I do of the defensive ends. Does that make sense, the way I worded that?
It does. Yeah. Like you feel better about the D ends kind of 1 through 4 or so.
Right.
But the tackles, those 1 and 2 guys, I think you feel stronger about because you got Black and Graves there versus Craig and Herkett. And I think that's fair because Herkett is he's probably the least known of those 4 starting the guys that are at the starting spots on the depth chart. He's the guy we know the least about. So, it's possible that like within a few weeks of the season, Herkett looks great. Like, oh, we defensive end, that's looking real solid now. But yeah, I think right now, just because we've seen more of Black and Graves, I agree with that the top end, the starters essentially of the D tackle, do feel a little more confident in them than the the DNs, because I mean, I have a lot of confidence in Craig, but I agree with you that Herkett is just a little bit less of a known quantity.
I think what people know about Ethan Herkett is he had the pick against Nebraska at the end of the game.
He's had
Like,
some big, yeah, he's had some big splash plays, I think, which is really fun. So now the question becomes when he's playing, 50, 60 snaps, um, does he hold up? What does he look like, playing more, et cetera. So I'm bullish on what he's going to do, but it's, until you see it on the field for a couple weeks, you're just kind of going to wait and see.
and like then again, he had 52 tackles and 6 tackles for loss last season in 13 games.
Yeah, that's not exactly spot duty. That's true.
So
He was, he was, he was a regular member of that rotation, so that's fair.
he's a homegrown kid from Cedar Rapids Xavier. That's where he played his high school ball. Um, and so yeah, he's kind of a classic Iowa guy at that defensive end spot. And then I think I've hashed it out on this pod before. Maybe you and I, yeah, this last week's pod we talked about Max Llewellyn, and then I feel better about the depth too for what I just noted about Brian Allen. And also, there's that level of hope that he can kind of step into that potential and be what he can be kind of a terrorizer in that second unit. So that's why we've seen it, right? We haven't
Yep.
seen it with the guys who come after Graves and Black at the defensive tackle spot.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, there's Pittman, who's been solid, but hasn't really kind of blown up yet. And then there's other guys that we just really haven't seen anything from. So then that gets, that's just projecting at that point. And yeah, I think the depth at D tackle is, the one area on the defense that gives me the most concern for this upcoming season. And it's not a ton of concern. Like the rest of the defense looks really good. But you're going to need more than two and a half, 3 guys at that D tackle rotation. So they're going to need to have those unknowns either step up, or you mentioned in the article that if somebody like Brian Allen can maybe play a little bit of a hybrid role, play a little tackle potentially. If that's what needs to happen, to give some quality depth at D tackle, maybe that's what they do. But that's the one area on the defense where I think they got to find some pretty good answers, because that looks like the one potential weakness of the defense right now to me.
One fun question that has been posed by us here, as well as in that article that again you can check out on iowa.rivals.com, is which freshmen are standing out so far in camp. This is always fun. You can ask the same question every single year and it's still fun. Last year I'm sure we would have heard a little bit about John Nestor. We might have heard a little bit. I remember hearing about Zach Ortworth partway through the year before he saw the field. And then, of course, we were talking about Ben Keeter quite a bit last year as well. He will not be on the team this fall as he's looking to pursue a world championship in wrestling. But we're talking about the incoming class, the class of 2024. And if we had to guess, this is something I'm going to write about as well after Kids Day, just because that way we can hear, that way I can add some conjecture too of my own thoughts. And to revert back to, and you can listen to our conversation about the 2024 class when they all signed back in December. That's on YouTube. That's on whatever podcasting platform you're listening to. So if you're curious about all of them, we did a whole rundown on the entire class. So you can check that out there. And of course, we've got a ton of recruiting content on Hawkeye Beacon as well. But to me, there are a few names that stick out as potential guys that could come in and contribute. And when you're looking at potential contributors as freshmen at Iowa, there's only so many options. You don't look at defense. Defense is X-nayed. No way, not a chance, right? You're looking at special teams. You're looking at offense. If we're talking about those two phases of football, special teams, you're going to talk about a defensive back more than likely. Maybe a linebacker, maybe. But to me, it's a guy that I talked about on the ANF podcast when I was on there. He was my first overall draft pick for the 2024 class, and that's Jalen Watson. I think he's a guy that can be your gunner. He's done really good things on the track. He was awesome on both sides of the football field as a senior at Central Catholic in Toledo. They won a state title there, and I think he can be a really fun gunner. That's also contingent on how much special teams is John Nestor going to play, how much special teams is Cohen Entringer going to play, because that level of depth with all those 6th-year COVID seniors coming back. So, do you see Jalen Watson playing some special teams, Ross, based on what you know, what you've read from me?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, the only
At least
thing
as
that
a possibility. Not maybe not definitely,
yeah,
seeing the field, but it's a possibility, right?
absolutely a possibility. Yeah, I mean, I think you're right. I think the big question, which you pointed out, is how much do Nestor and Entriger play on special teams? Because that's gonna have a trickle down effect on opportunities for a guy like Watson. If they're, Iowa's top two gunners, is there still a spot for Watson to get many snaps on special teams? I don't know. But overall, I think that's definitely a spot where he could see some action, get on the field, make an impact potentially. I was thinking of a couple of guys on offense, although one of them may be more of a special teams guy, or maybe both of them for that matter. But KJ Parker and Brevin Dahl, just kind of interested to see, two dynamic, explosive athletes, get the guys that you want to, get the ball in their hands, see what they can do. So wide receiver is such a wide open position, it feels like, to an extent, that if there's a unit for a freshman to break through, I feel like that's one of the better possibilities, because I mean, there are upperclassmen there, but obviously no one has really, shown out and locked down roles in the wide receiver unit yet, I would say. So that's a possibility. And then also, like, maybe in the return game. I don't the return game, probably get a little better sense of that after, the media day and kids day stuff this weekend. But who's kind of stepping up to replace Cooper in the return game and then at kick returner? I think Brevin Dahl could be a really exciting possibility there. So yeah, those are guys that kind of leapt out to me as that special teams possibilities. Dahl at running back. You've written about this before, but running back is one of Iowa's deepest positions on paper for sure. Like they go. I mean, you got a guy like, TJ Washington essentially move over to wide receiver to try and get snaps because the running back room is so crowded. So, as exciting as Brevin Dahl is, it's hard to see a true freshman coming in at running back with the other talent there right now and getting too many opportunities there, I would say.
You mentioned both of them being playmakers. These are guys you get the ball in space and let them do their work, right?
Yep.
And that's why I could see both of them playing wide receiver as well. But again, wide receiver is wide open. Wide open. We don't know who's going to be playing a ton of snaps other than Caleb Brown, who will be missing the first game of the season, right?
Yep.
And returner, like, do you want to go with Caden Weegan again, who was back there with Cooper
Yep.
out? Do you want to go Caleb Johnson on kickoff again? Like, or do you want to get the young guy who ran 10-4 in the 100 last year, get the ball
I
in his
mean,
hands?
hey, Brevin's got speed to burn, so that's kind of exciting.
Yeah.
That's not kind of, that is exciting.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. So those are the three guys that I really see. Of course, somebody's going to surprise us, right? Like we were saying Ben Keeter, Ben Keeter, Ben Keeter, Ben Keeter last year, and I don't know that Ben Keeter saw a snap.
The one, yeah, he didn't, unfortunately. The one other freshman that I was thinking about was Gavin Hoffman at tight end.
Yeah.
If they kind of want to like fast track him, because you're going to lose Lachey after this year, String is going to be
He'll be
junior.
back.
He'll be back, but he'll be a junior or senior next year, right?
I don't know.
Or is he?
Here's to the
But
scholarship chart. He will be a senior.
senior, right? So he's going to be gone relatively soon too. So you kind of want to get that, keep that tight end pipeline flowing. And Gavin Hoffman seems like he's got, tremendous upside. You're going to want him to be hopefully playing a big role there before too long. So if he's picking things up quickly, maybe he's a guy that would burn a red shirt. Maybe not see a ton of action, but just kind of he's traveling, he's getting a few snaps and etc. So yeah, that's a guy that I think we could see more of him as the season goes on, potentially, if everything is clicking.
The one thing that I see getting in the way of Gavin playing is Johnny Pascuzzi, right? Because if it was
Yeah.
just Zach Ortworth there, then
Yeah.
maybe, but two guys that have seen the field, that Ortworth burned his red shirt last year, like Pascuzzi, he went into the portal, and I thought he was gonna. Well, he might have gotten some offers. I don't know. Maybe he just didn't post them. I haven't heard anything on that front, um, but he Gavin Hoffman could definitely get some time if again, rotation, injuries, what have you. He might even see some special teams one way or
Yeah.
another. So having that extra semester under his belt that the rest of the freshman class just doesn't.
Yeah.
There you
That's
go.
a big help.
Now on to some buy sell. And speaking of freshmen, Ross, are you buying or selling that 3+ freshmen burn their red shirts this year?
So am I saying that at least four are gonna burn their red shirts?
Three or more.
Three or more. Okay, so at least three. Um, yes, I'm gonna buy. I think it's gonna be close because with that 4 game rule, you can get guys, you can get their feet wet, give them a little playing time, and still preserve that red shirt. And I could definitely see guys, playing 3 or 4 games, but not, getting to that fifth game and beyond where their red shirt's gone. But I think there's just enough guys, and I think overall we've seen it over the last few years where there's usually enough guys that just end up playing, like Nestor last year. So I don't think there'll be a lot more than 3, but I do think there's going to be at least 3. You're unmuted, Elliot.
Sorry. How many got burned last year? Just Ortworth and Nestor?
Nestor, was it just those 2 or was there a third one?
I think it was just those two.
It might have been just those 2.
Somebody is probably screaming in their mic somewhere, but I'm pretty sure
Apologies.
I'm pretty sure it's just those two. Now, my issue here is the fact that we just brought up 4 different guys who could see the field, right? And there's no telling how things are going to shake out health-wise, right?
Well, all right. Also, here's one gimme Redshirt that's getting burned. Reese, our new punter.
Ah, that's true.
That
is true.
So there's one.
I should have made that 4 or more. Damn it. All right. Well, guess I'm buying it. My bad. All right. On to this next one.
I think you're right, though, that it's going to be tight when it comes to like 3, non-punter freshmen,
Right.
essentially. Like that's going to be close. I'm going to say yes, but if it's under 3, I'm not going to be like, oh my God, how did that happen?
Right. Right. Okay. Well, if we're not including the punter, which of course, you know what? I'll sell it. I'll sell it because I think the new offense plays a part, and all these guys have had that extra semester that have been with the team longer than the freshmen. They're still figuring out what it means to be a college football player. They're still really working on putting on the pounds, which Gavin Hoffman had the opportunity to do in the spring. He gained 17 pounds in the spring.
I believe so, yeah.
Something crazy like that.
Yeah, from the different rosters we saw.
Right. So I'll sell it. I'll sell it. We'll mix things up here. And I'll go to you for these next few. You read them and tell me what you think.
All right. Buy or sell. Cade McNamara plays more than Brendan Sullivan this year.
Well, we haven't.
This isn't. I will say, the wrinkle for this is it just plays more. So it's not, it doesn't necessarily mean that Sullivan beats him out for the job. Knock on wood, Cade stays healthy. But we've seen what's happened the last couple of years. I think that is a factor. With McNamara, can he play? 12 games or whatever.
Right. We do have a note on this particular thing on our premium board that you should check out. It's a pretty interesting nugget from with inside fall camp. Now, I'm gonna. I feel like I'm forced to sell here, right? Like you got to prove to me, Cade, that you got to stay healthy. Like, I believe it when I see it. The entirety of the offense, how Cade plays, how Cade can stay healthy this year. Like those are both things. Prove it to me. You know, believe it when I see it. It's that simple.
That's fair. I mean, I would say if Cade stays healthy, I think the answer to this is buy, and he does. But I think that health is just a really big question mark, and it is in that, prove it to us department for right now, because he missed so much time last year. He missed all of the previous season at Michigan, I believe, or most of it. So it's just like the health is a really big question mark with Cade. And that doubt is enough to get me to go sell for now. But I hope I'm wrong in terms of the health. Like if Sullivan just beats him out and is the better quarterback, may the best man play, so on. But you hope he doesn't win this just because he's healthier than Cade. That you hope that Cade doesn't have another just like injury riddled fall, basically.
Right. And yeah, you nailed that there. Now on to this third buy sell. Caleb Johnson. These are all credit to Ross, by the way. Not the first one. The first one was all me, but Ross got these last few. Caleb Johnson has more rushing yards than Lachey Williams. The Doak Walker watch list nominee, Lachey Williams. This is another tough one too, because we didn't get to see both of them healthy last year. Lachey was the only running back who stayed healthy throughout the entirety of the season last year of the three-headed monster, I guess that was. Yeah, I wouldn't call it a three-headed monster. The three running backs that played last year in Caleb Johnson and Jazz Patterson and Lachey Williams. I think I've said this on this podcast before. Caleb Johnson is the most talented running back on the roster. Like he's the most high end. Whether or not he puts it all together on the field is up to him. And I think we more or less had this conversation going into last season, and he told us that he put on weight, and he told us that he was packing it, or like he wanted to dish out the hits, and then we didn't really see it. So if I'm gonna buy something like this, I need to see it. Like it's kind of the same thing as Cade staying healthy, right? Like, tell me one thing, show me another. Well, now you got to prove it to me, right? Sell, 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 sell.
I'm gonna buy, and I'm gonna buy because the last time these guys were both healthy, uh, 2 years ago, Caleb was the guy, got the touches, got the yards. I think they're both healthy now, and although I think LaShawn did a great job last year, at filling in, I just think, like you said, Caleb has the more ability. He's got more high end ability, that top gear that LaShawn doesn't have. And I think he's gonna prove that out during camp. We'll see what the depth chart is what it is, especially a running back. Like they kind of go with the hot hand there more often than not. And I think it's going to be Caleb this year. Again, this is assuming good health for both guys, obviously.
For all we know, Kamari Moulton will lead the team in.
Exactly.
Up next, someone other than Luke Lachey leads the team in receptions and or receiving yards. Now, a couple weeks ago, I said something like that was my hot take, that he wouldn't lead the team in receptions or receiving yards. With that said, I'm going to sell this. Like Caleb misses that first game, right? Caleb Brown misses that first game. I think inevitably it's going to take him a little bit to get into a rhythm because he's going to be that game behind everybody else. And I don't think anybody else is going to come remotely close to Luke Lachey other than Caleb Brown or Addison Ostranga. Like you've really got three choices, and Luke Lachey is going to be a top 3 round NFL draft pick. Like you look at what he was able to do in just 2.25 games last year. He had 10 receptions. Like, even with Eric All, who Cade had played with and did have a good connection with, it really appeared that Luke was the feature of the offense. He was Cade's safety valve, more or less. Luke is he's the best player on the offense. He's gonna be in competition for being one of the best players on the team. Like, Luke is legit, and he's the next tight end in tight end university, right? Like, I fully expect him to contribute on an NFL roster when he gets there. So buy. Sorry, sell.
So yeah, I am sell on the receptions strong because I just think you mentioned it before. Lachey is going to be that safety blanket for Cade or Brendan or whoever the quarterback is. Like, that's the guy when the play breaks down, they're going to look for him. He's going to be the lead option on a lot of plays too. So he's just going to get a lot of love. So I think I think the other receivers, they're going to kind of, fight against each other for receptions to an extent, and that will kind of keep them down. Where I don't feel quite as strong is the receiving yards, because I could see if Iowa actually has like some decent deep threats and actually returns to some downfield passing, I could see that being interesting. But I'm still selling on that too, because number one, I just think, like you said, Lachey is going to have so many receptions, the yardage is going to come with that. And number two, what I said about the receivers kind of fighting each other for, receptions, I think they're going to fight each other for those downfield passes too, if they happen. Like, I don't think one or two guys is going to monopolize the downfield passing game. And also, like, you mentioned before, like, you got to prove it to us. Like, we really got to see it before we believe it with the Iowa passing game. I'm hoping and thinking that there's going to be improvement there, but if we're talking downfield passing of a significant amount, then we got to see that before we can, really bank on it, I would say.
Between not knowing, like, I ranked receivers last in position group rankings for a reason, right? It's just one big question mark. Caleb Brown and one big question mark, right? And we saw him for 4 games basically last season, and the offense was inept enough to where they couldn't get their best player the ball. Like, so what are we gonna see there?
So
And
if you let's take Lachey out though, and think about this one. Like, are you going to buy or sell Caleb Brown leading the team in receptions and yards, even though he's going to be playing one fewer game than everybody with that suspension?
you sure like to make things difficult, don't you, Russ? I
Discussion
mean,
content.
yes, yeah. The only other player, like I said, that I think would be in contention there would be Addison Ostranga. I mean, if it's Brendan Sullivan, maybe Jacob Gill, just based on prior connections. But the thing that one, I hope to see out of Tim Lester, and two, that I've gathered about him is that he appears to have some offensive common sense, and that you get your best player the ball. And if Caleb Brown is your best player, you get him the ball, right? And so that I would probably buy. At least yards, maybe not touchdowns, but yards, because you want to get in this offense, you want to get your ball to your best player and let him make plays in space.
Touchdowns is hard. Touchdowns can
Right.
be really fluky. And with Iowa's passing game, but lately the touchdowns have been as rare as diamonds. So buy or sell Nick Jackson having more tackles than Jay Higgins this year.
Well, one, man, I think I'll sell this as well, because one, the offense is designed to funnel tackles to the Mike linebacker, right? And like, you don't have 172 tackles or 71 or whatever it was on defense on accident, right? You
Yep.
don't want your Mike linebacker to have that many tackles, right? Like, they were just on the field way too much
Yeah,
last year.
that's purely a function of playing time and the fact that the offense just could not stay on the field. I mean, so many
Right.
3-and-outs, and oh, here comes the defense again.
Exactly. Nick Jackson finished with, I think, 117, 114, something like that. And that, but at the same time, we didn't really see him be Nick Jackson until like 4 or 5 games into the season. And then it was like, oh, yeah, that's first team All-American caliber play right there. And so that would be my caveat to buy something like that. But I do think it's just going to be Jay Higgins because of the way the defense is designed. And I mean, he's a
Yeah.
thumper, right? That's the function of the Mike linebacker in Iowa's defense.
Yeah. I mean, the Mike linebacker has led Iowa in tackles for, I have to break it down, but the vast majority of the seasons under, Norm Parker and Phil Parker. Like you said, that's just the way the defense is designed. Like that's where the plays are flowed to go. The middle linebacker's there to just clean up. So that's Jay Higgins. So yeah, I'm selling, but Nick Jackson is so good, and he's got another year of like comfort and familiarity in this defense and in this role that I am intrigued to see what he does and if he's going to gobble up some more tackles. And, last year there was a huge tackle gap between Jackson and Higgins. I don't think it's going to be much closer this year, I think. I'm still thinking Higgins because, like you said, that's just the way the defense is designed to work. But Jackson is so good, and he's going to be more comfortable this year. I think he's going to have a really good year, and it's going to be interesting and closer in terms of the tackle count.
One thing I wrote in ranking the defensive position groups is like it would not shock me if Iowa had 2 first team All-Americans. Like that's how good these guys are. They're freaking good. Like they're really freaking good.
Yeah, it's one of those kind of symbiotic things. I think like if I was good enough to have two potential All-Americans, it's going to be because Jackson and Higgins played phenomenal this season. Like they're gonna work together that way. So yeah, and if that happens, the defense is great. Iowa's gonna have probably a really good season. So that'll be
La-
exciting to watch.
Last buy sell, Xavier Nwankpa leads the team in interceptions. The I'm gonna say buy because well, Cooper DeJean's not on the roster anymore. And the function of the free safety spot is not necessarily to cause turnovers. The function of the free safety spot is to call the defense, well, partially call the defense along with the Mike linebacker and to not get beat over the top, right? Not allow big plays. Jamari Harris, John Nestor, I don't think there's going to be one side of the field that they attack more or less than the other. If it is, it's John Nestor's side because he's unproven. And I think, well, that'll only benefit Jamari in his ability to cause turnovers because it's first read, you go to your first read, your second read, your third read, and maybe this guy on the left is open, but or the right wherever he's at. And I think you allow a guy with the talent of Xavier to just read things with his eyes and then bang, fire off at a ball, right? Or, Sebastian, it might be Sebastian Castro, right? He had those 2 game-winning interceptions against Iowa State and Wisconsin last year, and he's just like a missile, right? Like he's there and
Yeah,
then he's
and
not. So I would probably say his biggest competition for who ends the year with the most interceptions between Wampa and the rest of the defense is probably Sebastian Castro.
yeah, especially that Castro is the cash. Like that role is kind of designed to be around the ball a lot.
Right.
So he should have a lot of opportunities to force turnovers and get interceptions. Um, yeah, I'm selling because I do think Wampa's going to take a nice step forward this year and going to have a better season in terms of like the numbers and stuff. Like he was good last year, but the numbers weren't necessarily there in some departments. I think the numbers will be better this year, and he'll play well and play better. But it's just kind of a numbers game. Like if I get 10 other guys on the defense, even though some of them aren't going to get interceptions like the D line, obviously, but just give me the field essentially against Wampa in terms of most interceptions. But I that's one stat I'm gonna be paying attention to this year because last year was a down year for the defense in terms of interceptions. We'll see how that bounces back this year. Like the Ball Hawks were quiet last year, but we'll see how that bounces back this year.
All right, Ross, you've been holding down Olympics coverage for us at Hawkeye Beacon. Tell us about what's going on there for Hawkeyes in the Olympics.
Yeah, so we are drawn near the end of the Olympics, and we've had some good showings from the Hawkeyes there. A couple medals. Eve Stewart, who was a rower at Iowa, got a bronze medal with Great Britain. So that's cool. It's the first Iowa rower, I think, to medal at the Olympics. Not going to pretend I know a ton about rowing, but very cool for her to medal. And then Brittany Brown also added a medal to Iowa's tally. She was a sprinter at Iowa a few years back, really good. 11-time All-American between indoor, outdoor. That's how you get so many opportunities, All-American chances. And she ran the 200. She kind of came on strong at the U.S. trials earlier this summer, finished second to Gabby Thomas, and looked really good. And she carried that over to Paris, to the Olympics. She won her first race, which was the heat, got into the semis, won her semi, that got her into the finals. And then in the finals, she looked great, and she got a bronze. She finished third. Gabby Thomas, who won the U.S. trials, won the 200 at the Olympics too. She was just kind of head and shoulders above the field. Like, she was just flying in that race, and looked really good. But yeah, it's phenomenal for Brittany Brown to get on the podium, get that bronze. She is the first female Iowa track athlete to get a medal at the Olympics. So making a little history there. Very cool. I have a downer note. Megan Gustafson, she's playing for Spain at the Olympics. They had a really good group stage, went 3-0. Megan was leading the team in scoring through that point. They're looking solid, and it seemed like they'd have a good chance to get a medal, silver or bronze. The U.S. team, even without Caitlin, still very loaded, still heavy favorites to go ahead and win that gold medal at the end of the week. But, the other two medals kind of looked up for grabs, and looked like Spain would have a shot maybe to get one of those, but they completely just fell apart. Earlier today, actually, against Belgium, quarterfinal game, they got down by 20, like in the second quarter, third quarter, and did not come back, could not come back. Megan had a good game, 21 points, led Spain, but was not enough. So her Olympics is over. And then we got a couple more Hawkeyes coming up. The wrestling is a second week thing here at the Olympics, so it's kind of in swing now. And Iowa has two competitors getting ready to go. Spencer Lee is going tomorrow, and then Kennedy Blades for the women goes at the end of the week. Spencer, everyone's been really hyped to see what he can do. He had a phenomenal Iowa career, won 3 Big Ten titles, 3 NCAA titles, and was just unstoppable for the most part when his knees were not working against him with torn ACLs. Even that didn't totally stop him. One year he won that title with 2 torn ACLs, which is still insane and incredible. But yeah, so he goes tomorrow. Thursday starts bright and early, 4:30 a.m. Central Time on Peacock, 57 kilograms. The bracket came out today. He is not seated in the bracket because he has not competed enough on that international stage. Just hasn't had enough matches really to get a seed, or enough good wins really to get a seed. So he was an unseeded guy, and he got a tough draw. He's facing the 6th seed in the first round, and he actually faced him earlier this year when he was qualifying for the Olympics, and he had a really tight match, 10-9. He won over Zhu Shu from China, and it's a close match. Spencer was down early, 6-1, came back, took a lead, and then gave up some points late and was kind of hanging on at the end. So that's going to be a difficult opponent right out of the gate for Spencer, see what he can do. And then because of that, the seeding, like the path, if the seeds hold, he could have to face the 3 seed in the quarters, the 2 seed in the semis, and then the top seed in the finals. So on paper, that is a really tough draw. Could be a really tough set of opponents to go through. But we will see how it all shakes out. Spencer definitely has the ability to medal here in Paris. He's has phenomenal offense, can score and score in bunches, score quickly. So if he gets it going, it's definitely possible for him to wind up on that podium. We will see if he gets back. Getting past that first match could be a really big key for him, I think, with that tough guy he's facing. But yeah, going to be exciting to watch him tomorrow morning. See how it goes. We'll have a full coverage on our website. You can check that out, and on Twitter. You can follow the results there. And then we'll write up what happens at the end. Hopefully, we get to see Spencer win a medal. Iowa has not. Thomas Gilman did win a medal at the last Olympics, I think, in Tokyo. So that's the last Hawkeye wrestler to medal. You do have to go back to Tom Brands in '96 for a Hawkeye wrestler that got gold, though. So that has been a minute since that's happened. And so be nice if Spencer could add to that total, but we will see what happens on Thursday.
We will see. And like Ross said, we will have coverage at Hawkeye Beacon and on Twitter and other social media as well. Hawkeye Beacon. You can find us wherever you're on socials. Check us out there, and we will wrap it up here. We appreciate you tuning into this episode of HawkCast, brought to you by Iowa.Rivals.com and Hawkeye Beacon. If you are not a premium subscriber yet, now is the time. Well, soon will be the time, especially with a promo coming up. We will let you know all the details about that coming up at Media Day. That day is when it launches. So going to be tons of premium content there for you to check out. And then as well, if you're on YouTube, make sure you hit that subscribe button, drop a like, drop a comment. Are you buying? Are you selling? What are you thinking there? And what's your biggest question heading into Media Day on Friday? If you're listening on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, you might be listening but not subscribed. So make sure you do that today and leave that rate and review. It helps us out. And of course, it does make us very happy. We appreciate you tuning in. For now, I am Eliot Clough at Eliot Clough on Twitter, joined by Ross Binder. We will see you next time.